Hi, thank you. I'm Simonetta from Venezuela, as it says, and I have to apologize. I'm not going to give you a lovely picture of the world and of India or of Kenya as June and Kapil, because I'm actually a bit angry, and my objective, my aim here today is that you leave this room slightly angry too, but constructively angry, I hope. So, DAVOS, we have a problem, or actually two. When I was only 2 years old in 1992, countries met in Rio and signed for the first time a declaration in which they committed to reduce CO2 emissions and tackle global warming. And fast forward, I'm here today, almost 30 years later, shameful. And emissions have doubled, and we have already reached 1 degree of global warming. And why hasn't the international community been able to act? Or why haven't we leaders been more decisive in the action? And this type of failure and inaction is all too familiar to me, because I'm from Venezuela, and you must have heard the disaster that's happening there. But when I was only 8 years old, in 1998, a populist military, Hugo Chavez, won the presidency of my country. And ever since, 20 years have passed, and I have seen an unprecedented destruction of wealth. Venezuela passed from being the country in the region with the best in democratic institutions and with the highest standards of living to a complete failed state, in which in 4 years, the last 4 years, GDP has halved. In 2018, inflation was of 1 million %. And 9 out of 10, that is 90% of Venezuelans didn't have enough income to eat. Why hasn't the international community acted? And why haven't we leaders been more decisive on our action there? So you see why I'm a bit angry. I think, however, there's always lessons to be learned, and I think that there are some lessons in the psychology of inaction in the Venezuelan case that can be useful to understand and to try not to have the same inaction on climate change. And the first is that we must not avoid facts and not avoid worst case scenarios. So if you see a graph of concentration of CO2 emissions in the atmosphere, it's actually a pretty cool exponential. And if you see a graph of Venezuelan percentage increase in inflation, it's a pretty cool exponential. And those graphs have nothing in common, except for the fact that there are leaders, world leaders even, that cannot spot the trend, that cannot see the exponential. Or even if the exponential, they can see it, they think the worst case scenario is not probable. Believe me, the worst case scenario is probable. The second lesson I felt I could share was that we must find ways to change behavior when crises are slow motion and self-inflicted. So when the crisis is slow motion, you get to new levels of low, and you get used to it, and you get used to getting worse. And also, when you voted for the bad government, or when you are causing with your everyday actions CO2 emissions, it's really hard to ask people to change behavior. So I haven't figured it out, but we need to figure it out. And third lesson is that collapse happens rapidly after certain thresholds. So we have been fighting in the streets of Venezuela for more than 20 years, the government. And today there's a massive protest called, and I have friends and family who are there, risking their lives in the protest. But the collapse happened only 2 years ago, and it was fast, and it has displaced 10% of the Venezuelan population to the region. And the scientists have warned which are the